This is the Untold Italy travel podcast, and you are listening to episode number 239.
Ciao a tutti and benvenuti to Untold Italy, the travel podcast where you go to the towns and villages, mountains and lakes, hills and coastlines of Bella Italia. Each week your host, Katy Clarke, takes you on a journey in search of magical landscapes, history, culture, wine, gelato, and of course, a whole lot of pasta. If you're dreaming of Italy and planning future adventures there, you've come to the right place.
Buongiorno, ciao everyone. Today, let's go to Florence and explore one of the world's finest art collections, bursting with masterpieces by Michelangelo, Botticelli, Raphael, Giotto, and more. The Uffizi Gallery in Florence is an art lover's dream, but it's also an excellent place to begin your art history journey. Joining us today is art aficionado and owner of LivTours, Angelo Carotenuto. As you'll hear on today's show, Angelo's interest in art was fostered by a unique project created by his parents. Perhaps they had no idea where he would end up in the world and what he would be doing, but one thing is for sure, Angelo not only found a passion for art, but was inspired to share it. So let's go explore the galleries of the Uffizi with him and learn how we can make the most of our time there. Bentornato, Angelo. Welcome back to the Untold Italy podcast.
Grazie mille. Thank you for having me back.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to have you with us on the podcast. And of course, I can't wait to get started delving into all the treasures of the Uffizi Gallery. But before we do that, can you share with our listeners who may not know you just yet, your story and that of LivTours?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me again. Always a pleasure to speak to you and your listeners and your audience. If they do not know who I am and who I represent, I am Angelo Carotenuto, born and raised in Rome, Italy. Mother is American, hence the almost non-accent speaking ability. I am the founder and lucky co-owner of a company called LivTours, formerly known as Live Italy Tours, a company that I founded in 2009 out of a desire and a wish and a need to enable people's dreams of travel come true and allow people's visions to actually come and become reality when they come to travel to Italy. A lot of times we forget those visions that we may have had, and we tend to come here and just quickly do the things that we're told to be done, but forget the quintessential value of our travel, which is living a local culture, hence the name Live Italy, LivTours, in all of its aspects. And obviously Italy is an amazing playground for this because we dream of a lot of things about Italy. We dream about wine, food, culture, art, great art galleries, but also soccer, fashion, coastlines, and the Alps, as we were just saying earlier offline. And I wanted a company that satisfied all that hunger, all that need. So I created a series of services, and every service was to comply and make that vision, that dream come true. So at its very beginning, Live Italy it could have offered from a regular Vatican Museum tour all the way to a rowing class in Venice, to watching a soccer match in Rome, or tasting wine in the Tuscan hills of Chianti. So this is very varied, and that's been sort of like our core and the beginning of our success. And when Christine joined the company, who then became my wife, we had another epiphany, which was nobody in their, and I say this with all due respect, but nobody in their sane mind dreams about being herded through galleries, museums, cities, hallways, roads, in large groups with dirty headsets, having a hard time keeping up with their guide, never being able to question, debate, argue, or just discuss with your tour guide and satisfy your hunger of culture and immersion. So we decided we were going to eliminate all those things. And the best perfect format besides the fact that we offer private tours for all of our inventory, all of our portfolio, the perfect format was to give guides a maximum group size of 6 people. So that couple or that family really felt, as they were part of something, that their money is well worth, that they could divert the conversation or simply be transported by the guide's passion and emotion of sharing their culture and their knowledge with them. And that sort of has been the winning formula of our almost 12 to 14-year life. And thanks to that, and I guess people kind of get hooked to the group size and the way we care and the way we manage their customer satisfaction, that we've been asked to not only explore all of Italy with our product, but also go outside of the Italian borders. So now we're in 27 different destinations all over Europe.
Yeah, amazing. And congratulations about that. It's a real testament to your team. And our regular listeners know how much I appreciate, the style, pace, and the attention to detail of the entire end-to-end experience with LivTours, which is consistently wonderful across Italy and Europe. And again, it's a real testament to your team.
Thank you. Thank you, Katy.
Yeah, no, we do love working with you. So today we're going to head to Florence, which obviously is known throughout the world as an art and architecture paradise. And the crown jewel of the city is, of course, the Uffizi Gallery. So do you want to share with our listeners, Angelo, why this is such an important collection and why everyone should visit this gallery once in their lifetime?
I think we have to, as with every story, to create the correct context and reason. I think we have to go back a little bit in why Florence is so important and why the gem of Florence is something that visitors should feel compelled or almost obligated in visiting. Florence started in 59 BC by the Romans, and the Romans created the colony of Florence as a city for veteran soldiers to go and live in. But as the Romans did, they always founded new colonies in very smart places. So the river Arno, which is the beautiful river that crosses the entire city center now, which is famous for the Ponte Vecchio. When you get onto the Ponte Vecchio with all its beautiful jewelry shops, you take that iconic picture of the Ponte or on the Ponte of the river Arno. Its proximity to inland's beautiful hills and Tuscan hills that everybody knows about, and its proximity to the sea. Now, mind you, back in the day, the ocean, the Mediterranean Sea was a little closer. Pisa at that time was a port. So Florence was in a perfect, harmonious place to become a successful city. To the point that I'm going to skip forward. I'm going to go a few centuries ahead of my time, and we're going to get into the Middle Ages. And already in the Middle Ages, it was a center of commerce. By using the River Arno and by using its beautiful location within the Italian peninsula, Florence became the center of exchange, of goods, of material, and for that reason grew to almost 300,000 inhabitants by the 4th century, literally the day before the Black Plague. Florence had 300,000 inhabitants. That's pretty big considering the time. Now I'm talking about Florence city center and the rural area right around it, 300,000 people, which was obviously decapitated by half with the Black Plague. But as soon as the Black Plague was over, its core values and its core heart continued to rise. And Florence became the center of Italian language, for example. And by historians since the early ages of some of the greatest writers, such as Dante Alighieri or Machiavelli, etc., Florence became the center, the epicenter of what we consider to be the perfect pronunciation, the perfect dialect of the entire peninsula. Mind you, the Italian peninsula had an enormous amount of dialects. We were split into small little dukedoms and cities and councils and colonies. We were influenced by the Arabic countries, the French, the Spaniards, the Turks, Eastern Europe. So Italy was a very confused country for many centuries. And language was not something homogenous. But for some reason, historians now claim that the origin of what we now know to be Italian is Florence. Probably mainly thanks to the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri and then the subsequent writers. Even though I may say, very silly, and I shouldn't say this, I love Florentine accent, Florentine dialect, because they tend to omit the letter C. So, for example, you may not hear this as a foreigner, but as an Italian, we hear this all the time. To say the word house or home, we say casa, and we pronounce the letter K, the letter C, the letter K, casa. But Florentines omit the K, and they make it a silent K, a H. And so they say haza.
Oh.
So funnily enough, it is some strange accent right there, but nonetheless, the writing style, the tonality, etc., is considered to be the core of Italian language. Soon after Dante Alighieri, the major bankers of the Pope started getting control over Florence, and these are the Medici family. Now, we've had a couple of generations of Medici until we finally get who we consider responsible of the birthplace of the birth of Renaissance, which is Lorenzo de' Medici. Lorenzo, who Florentines themselves called Lorenzo il Magnifico, the glorious. Because as a poet himself, as an artist himself, he invited the greatest minds that he could know of in Italy and in Europe to come and enjoy Florence City, and come and create there. Now we're talking about Michelangelo, Leonardo, Raphael, but also foreign artists and writers, musicians, etc., to come and perform and create in Florence. And most of the collection, most of the creativity, most of what was created during those times, and we're talking about the 15th century, 16th century, most of what was created at that time was then stored safely in the Uffizi Gallery, which was part of the home of the Medici family. We could consider it one of the oldest collections for this reason, one of the most important collections, and it continued to collect throughout time because we have Flemish artists to go and see, beautiful paintings by Rembrandt, for example, to go and see inside the Uffizi Gallery. And luckily preserved, even during World War II. Now imagine Florence was conquered by the Germans for an entire year, and it was then saved by South African and British allies who came over. And the Germans, as soon as they knew the Allies were coming, they destroyed every bridge except for the Ponte Vecchio. And luckily, they didn't do anything to the great collection, the glorious collection of the Uffizi Gallery. The Uffizi Gallery now, righteously so, is one of the most expensive art collections of Italy. The ticket is slightly more expensive than the Vatican Museums or the Colosseum, which during the past few years have increased their price as well, trying to reach the cost of the Uffizi Gallery. The Uffizi Gallery was led by a modern director, a German-Italian, who has made lots of changes to the administration and has made it more modern in a way by, for example, creating a high season or low season ticket price. The collection is huge, and it's hard to appreciate, to be completely honest with you, without a guide. That we know, we've said this many times, because it's a vast palace. There's just so much, and you could end up getting what we tour guides know as the Stendhal syndrome, where you get overwhelmed and you can't process, you can't separate, and you don't end up enjoying your visit. But we'll talk about what to go visit and how to make it better in just a second. But hopefully I gave you a good introduction of why the Uffizi Gallery should be visited when in Florence.
Oh, absolutely. I love this place because I actually studied Renaissance history at high school, and this is where I had this amazing teacher, and my mum told me I need to send the podcast over to this teacher because I think she's in her 90s now, but she's still absolutely interested in everything. But what drove me when I went to Florence, this is one of the first places that I went to, and it was in a winter, it was in a November, it was cold, it was in the 90s, and I'll never forget this because I was there and I think I was having Stendhal syndrome, and I was walking around And I was in a bit of a daze, and I'll never forget this because this really changed probably the trajectory of my life and how I ended up doing what I do now, is that I was standing in front of this painting, and I now know that it's Raphael's Madonna of the Goldfinch. And I was looking at it and I was like, oh, that's nice. There's a lady. I knew it was the Virgin Mary. I'm a heathen, but not quite that bad. And I knew, and I could see there was cherubs, but I had no concept of the symbolism and the meaning behind the painting, because at that time in my education in Australia, and I'm not quite sure about how it works in the United States or in the UK, but there wasn't a lot of attention paid to art history or any of that deep appreciation of art. So I had no idea. But then I bumped into this tour group and I was being a little bit cheeky and I was listening. It was a school group, actually. And I could hear what was being said and I couldn't believe what I was hearing, how the red on the goldfinch's breast was supposed to signify the crucifixion. And I was really, wow, this is amazing. And the colours on the Virgin Mary's dress, all of these things had some deep meaning and real insight into what was happening, not only when the artist painted it, but how they felt about religion and their society and all of those things. And so it was a big eye-opener for me, and I'll never, ever forget that, because I really knew then that I couldn't really go and see these places without someone to help me understand what it was all about. It changed my life, actually.
Absolutely. And you know what? I was just thinking about this right before we met up. It doesn't matter what kind of appreciation you have for art or art history. Such a rich collection allows you to appreciate for whatever you personally think you need to appreciate it for. It could be a style of a particular artist. It could be you appreciating the breathstrokes. Mm-hmm. It could be you appreciating or not, for example, being judgmental over a movement and a technique used. It could be the fact that you're particularly passionate about symbolism. In this particular case, Christian or religious symbolism. It could be that you just love watching and analyzing the action and appreciating its theatricality of it, and then recognizing the various characters, or not for the matter, and just objectively look at the action and appreciate the movement, the bodies, their form, their shape, the lighting effect, etc. A collection like this is unique in that sense because it's not one standard. It shows a lot. Again, we said from paintings, the Annunciation with Saint Mary was made by Simone Martini, and it's made in 1333. We could go appreciate Caravaggio masterpieces all the way to Rembrandt, right? So you have 200 or 300 years, and we're not even getting into the modern or in the Greek sculptures or into the modern art. If you're just passionate about that window of time from late Middle Ages all the way to latest part of the Renaissance, you have so much to just enjoy and absorb whilst inside the gallery.
Absolutely. Like you said, it is quite overwhelming. And I think people really just sort of gravitate around a few key pieces, don't they? So a lot of people really want to see the Botticellis there, which they're absolutely incredible paintings. And fortunately, they're a bit bigger than the Mona Lisa. If you've been to the Louvre and you are disappointed with the Mona Lisa, luckily Botticelli's Primavera is actually suitably large so that you can appreciate it. But I think when people, maybe if they go on their own, they sort of gravitate towards those hero pieces. And of course, they're amazing. Like of course you want to see them. But what are those pieces that you think that everyone should see? And then there's probably some other works that are equally as beautiful, but they're often missed. And I think they're the ones that sometimes speak to you the most.
Yeah. When you enter the Uffizi Gallery and you're brought upstairs immediately, some of the first rooms already show you the Botticelli pieces. So the Primavera, as you said, and the Birth of Venus. So to be completely honest with you, I'm a big fan of the Birth of Venus if I have to compare the two Botticelli pieces. the goddess arriving on shore on this beautiful seashell, and she emerges completely grown up, but yet naked, changing the season with the wind blowing and so forth is, in my opinion, extraordinary. And as you said, these are big paintings where you can, in a silly way, we're comparing it to the Mona Lisa, the beauty of a big painting where you can get really up close. Such as in the Uffizi Gallery. You can look at the various details, you can look at it from different angles, and the Uffizi Gallery really kind of gives you that opportunity. It's not an extraordinarily crowded museum, even though it's one of the most visited museums in Europe, but it's so vast that people tend to spread out. And so you can get yourself in the perfect angle or wait for that visitor to move away and put yourself in the right view. Yeah, for sure. I would tend to say that's one of my favorite ones as well, the Venus. When we were going back to how different cultures, Australians or Americans, and in my case, Italians, are able to appreciate art, it probably does depend on the type of education we received, right? It's not just from the type of education you receive at school from your 90-year-old art history teacher, but also potentially how much your family can expose you to these pieces, or if you're able to travel and whatnot. So if you're able to do it whilst you're studying art history at school, it really kind of makes sense because it brings those books to life. And I have to say, as an Italian, I'm extraordinarily lucky because that's what we did. You were forced to study it because really nobody really wants to do that when you're 12, 13, 14, 15. But then when you're brought there, all of a sudden it comes to life. So the education system, unfortunately, we are privileged because of that. But I have to say, I am particularly lucky because my parents, both artists, musicians, not visual artists, wanted us to have an appreciation for art in all of its forms. And I'm going to confess something that is quite embarrassing, silly, and yet it'll let you laugh and understand why I am in the art history world. And I have a business that particularly works with art history. Every year, my parents would have my sister and I create a calendar with a picture for every month that we would then print out. And back in the day, we're talking about the 80s, right? Late 80s. You would print out and mail to your family. And that was the Christmas gift that would come from us to our great-grandparents, our grandparents, our aunts and uncles, and so forth. Believe it or not, they've all saved this because it's extremely embarrassing. So, one day, and, it was, one year it was recipes, and we'd have pictures of us dressed as chefs for every month, a different recipe, depending on the season. Another calendar was probably seasons, what you do in that month in Italy. And so, you pick chestnuts in November and you look at your map and go to the beach in August. And then one year, we were mature enough, we were big enough, and it was the last one we did. It was art pieces, where Julia and I, my sister and I, would represent art pieces, like literally. So, for example, there's a picture of Julia and I, my sister and I, doing Michelangelo's Pietà, which everybody I'm sure knows, where I am Jesus Christ and I'm holding. Actually, Julia, is the Holy Mary, and I am Jesus Christ lying down on the laps of Julia. And it's perfectly pictured. My dad loved photography, perfectly lit. I mean, we would set things up with a curtain in the back. It would take us afternoons, hours and hours and hours to set this up. But the good thing about this is that then my parents made it a point to take us and see these pieces. So, yeah, you have to enact it. But when you act it, and you really kind of analyze, the face, the posture, you have to learn the story. Why are you there? What moment in the story? Apollo and Daphne we did, for example. Who was David? But one of the ones that I particularly love that is inside the Uffizi Gallery is Bacchus by Caravaggio.
Ah.
And I had to be chest naked with, a toga and a wig and all these grapes and fruits and stuff like that and a cup. And I was probably 9 or 10 or something like that. But then they took me to the Uffizi Gallery to go and see Caravaggio and see Bacchus. They were particularly in love with Caravaggio. So I became a fan of Caravaggio himself. I became a fan of the lighting, the theatricality of its painting, the source of light, that it's something aerial that comes in and represents something. Lights represent something always in Caravaggio, wherever it's coming from. The pointing of the lighting always has a significance, but it also has an enormous impact on the action. And the actors in Caravaggio's paintings are always in the middle of an action, either pointing or they're holding somebody or they just cut somebody's, It's gorgeous, it's glorious, it's theatrical, it's extremely advanced for Caravaggio's times, because really that kind of lighting, that kind of effect was only appreciated later in the 18th century, in the 17th century. So whenever, of course, there is so much more in the Uffizi. There's your Botticelli, there's your Piero della Francesca, there's, the Adoration of the Magi by Leonardo da Vinci, but then there's Bacchus, which was me when I was 10 by Caravaggio. And that when you reminded me about where we come from and the appreciation towards these pieces, how can we be involved? It reminded me of that story.
I think we need to see that photo.
My parents have it.
I feel like they were doing Instagram things before anyone was doing Instagram.
Oh, they were advanced. Oh, yeah. We would be millionaires nowadays or something like that.
That's amazing. Oh, but I mean, I think that's right. You've got to find something personal in this collection, this huge collection, and how can you make it personal? And for me, it was like this eye-opening moment where I had some insight into it. Wasn't just a painting, which I thought was very beautiful, but I also got some additional insight. And I think if you are wandering around the gallery and you might have the map and everything, you'll have one level of appreciation, but you can take it to a whole nother level if you've got someone that's going to guide you and like tap into your interests and help you understand what is going on in the art. Like, so as you explained, the light for Caravaggio and the technique is so different and unique. So I just learned something right there now, and I love learning. Like, I'm such a nerd. I like any opportunity that I can have to learn, I will take it. So this is why going on those journeys, and I'm sure not every tour is exactly the same, right? Like your guides have their favorite pieces as well.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, I have to say I'm extraordinarily proud of the tour guides we have in Florence. They're led by Raffaella, who's been with us since the very beginning of Live Italy. So she is really good at embracing our values and embracing the way we wish to share all of this with our clients. And she's surrounded herself with extraordinarily talented, very dedicated, very passionate humans. There are a lot of ways to decide to visit a collection so vast. We have come up thus far with quite a few different ways. We have obviously our regular 2.5-hour tour at any time of the day, wherever it's most comfortable for you. As a client, you wish to have breakfast, sleep in, have breakfast and go. You wish to do it after lunch. You wish to do it in the afternoon and so forth. That's clearly an option. We tend to do it in 2.5 hours, which is the average time that you need for a regular visit of the gallery. It allows you to enjoy all of the first floor, from the Botticelli all the way to Michelangelo's, the copy of the Laocoon made by Michelangelo, and then a few of the Flemish artists, and then go down. And as we were saying offline, even take a little bit of pit stop at the cafe on the terrace with a beautiful view of Florence's dome and terraces and rooftops. But you don't necessarily have to be there for 2.5 hours. And if you wish to try and see it at a quieter time, maybe because you're an early riser or you want to beat the heat and the crowds, and you wish to kind of, I don't want to say do an express, but kind of hit the highlights immediately first thing in the morning and get yourself ready for something else, we have an early entrance Uffizi. And we call it an express because it's a little shorter than the regular daytime. It's shorter also because there's fewer people and it's easier to navigate through the rooms and the hallways. So we meet up at 8 a.m. It's not that early. We have early entrances, as you know, Katie, that are far more fatiguing during your vacation. So at 8 a.m., you come to Piazza della Signoria. You enjoy Piazza della Signoria with our tour guide. You make your way towards the gallery, which opens at 8:15, 8:30, and then we're straight in, and we're first people up the stairs, first people in front of the Botticelli. And right there, that's your early entrance. That's your first access. You don't have to navigate people. You don't have to try and wait for that person to move. The tour guide puts you in the correct, perfect, most perfect angle to view the Botticelli and all the other pieces coming after. And then you have the time to take your pictures, distance yourself from the tour a little bit, still hear her, and then take awesome pictures of a nearly empty museum. Then the obvious other way is for families who, tend to be a little bit discouraged by visiting such vast art collections and tend to either feel fear in doing it on their own with their children because, as I said, my parents had a way to do it. They would involve us in the making of that painting, and then they were like, okay, now I'm going to drag you to go see it. And, maybe not all families. Actually, certainly not. It was only my family who would do something like that. But, doing it with a tour guide, especially doing it with what we do, which is, these kid-friendly tours. I don't want to call them treasure hunts, but they're interactive tours where there's a character's name is Liv. Liv is the same character that they may have used with us and helped accomplish various museums in Rome, in Venice, in Paris, and Barcelona, and at the British Museum in London, etc. And Liv presents themselves in a booklet, and the booklet is full of riddles and games and things to do, and the guide helps the children accomplish those riddles, which are interconnected with the painting, the art pieces, the rooms, so that they can, whether they like it or not, appreciate the place they're in. Meaning they may not be interested at all in the actual art piece, but they're interacting with it and they're living that experience, and it'll make it memorable for them, which is the whole point of taking children to a vacation, right? Making it memorable for them so you can talk about it for years to come. And when they become mature adults, they can think of that and they wish to do that for their children. And you as an adult appreciate the visit a lot more because your children are taken care of. They're being listened to. They can interact with the tour guide, and you are at the same time learning because the guide can and has the time to interact with you as well. And you don't have to only just worry about your children's attention span. It's a little shorter. It's 2 hours because children can't last 2.5 hours. But it's definitely a great way for families with children between the age of 5 and 11. And last but not least, for the true Renaissance lovers, we have an extended tour, which includes both the Uffizi Gallery and the Accademia, where Michelangelo's David is. So it's a little longer. It's 4 hours, maybe a few minutes more than that, because you have to walk between the two museums, which are in two different parts of the city. But we do a regular 2.5 hour tour of the Uffizi greatest hits, and then we walk you over towards the Accademia to see the Michelangelo's David. It's a good half day. If you're that kind of person that says, I need to see both of these things and get them done and do it with a tour guide, and I wish to really make a hit, an impression in myself and my memory, then that's a great tour. There's an extension to the Uffizi Gallery. At some point, the Uffizi just couldn't store everything. Let's put it that way, very in layman terms. And on the other side of the Arno, there's a beautiful palace called Palazzo Pitti, where there's an extension of the Uffizi collection. And we have a tour of Palazzo Pitti. And Palazzo Pitti's backyard is known as the Boboli Gardens, which are the beautiful gardens that build up onto the hill, which we also get to visit thanks to the Pitti Palace ticket. So that's Florence Museums for you.
Wow, you can really spend a lot of time exploring, can't you? And I can attest, Raffaella is absolutely incredible. And I did a tour with her of women's history of Florence, which we did our very first podcast together on, and that was amazing. Yeah, it's really wonderful to explore somewhere with someone that makes things so accessible. So it's not highbrow necessarily. If you wanted to go deep into like really technical things, she can do it. But if you wanted to stay light and, observational, she can definitely do that too. So this is the skill of someone like that they can really read the mood and adapt to that situation. But yes, the Uffizi, it's an iconic museum, and I know a lot of people have it on their list, but I mean, what you've done today is you've shown us, different ways that you can access it, but also spend the time exploring it your way and having a different interaction with that museum. I hope everyone gets to go there, actually. But the one thing you need to know is it's closed on Mondays.
Yeah. You're right. All state-run museums of Florence, or city-run museums of Florence, are closed on Monday. So even the Accademia and Palazzo Pitti are.
Sometimes people get caught out by that, and it's a little bit of a shock. And then the other one is that they have the free museum days, don't they, on the Sunday, the last Sunday of every month. And so I probably would avoid that one as well, because that would be a little bit crazy, I think, when people flock.
Yeah, because we did omit to say, people tend to think that there's big long lines only at the Vatican or at the Louvre or at the Colosseum, but there are lines at the Uffizi Gallery and the Galleria dell'Accademia where the David is. And you do need to pre-purchase your ticket. The official website is B-tickets Florence. So you can Google that and you'll find it. They're probably going to change administration as well within the next few months or years. We obviously pre-purchase all the tickets for you, so you don't have to get into that. But if you are not planning on taking a tour that allows you to get straight direct access into the galleries, into the museums, you absolutely need to buy it online. Otherwise, you'll find yourself standing in hours of line. The Uffizi Gallery, luckily, most of it is under the loggia of the Uffizi Palace, so it is under the shade. But Florence can get very, very hot. It's in this valley of the Arno, so it's very humid. And the Galleria dell'Accademia's line, for the most part, is under the sun on the sidewalk. So you certainly don't want to stand in that line. So buy yourself a ticket or take a tour.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the things that we have to do. I haven't been back for a few years, and I've got a little idea brewing that I haven't told anyone in my family yet, but I will tell everyone here, is that I really feel like going and hanging out in Italy in winter and just like going to museums and going to restaurants. Because I think it'd be really cool just to have that time and space just to enjoy some of these places that can get a little bit busy. But it's kind of a little dream of mine, and I might follow through with that one. Just putting it out there.
You should, absolutely. Maybe it isn't as cold as it used to be because of global warming, but regardless, even if it were cold, it's definitely a very pleasant experience to be there when the city is for you, when the city is working for you, and you're not trying to work the city and get through things in the heat wave and with the crowds, etc. So yeah, of course, definitely let's push for low season travel all we can.
Yeah, it's my favorite, I have to admit, because I just love getting immersed in everything and sort of more daily life. But let's face it, the Uffizi Gallery, built by the Medici, it wasn't so normal of daily life. they had a very refined and exciting life, the Medici, and thank goodness for them, because they did build an absolutely magnificent collection. So, Angelo, thank you for showing us around the Uffizi Gallery virtually today. And there's always something interesting to learn and discover, and I could visit again and again. So how can our listeners learn more about LivTours and book a Uffizi Gallery tour with you when they visit Florence?
Well, first of all, thank you again for having us. It's always a pleasure speaking to you and to your audience. Our official website is livtours.com, LivTours.com. You can filter for Florence and Tuscany as a region, and you'll find all of our products, all of our services that we offer there. If for any reason you need help or consultation or some aid in choosing the perfect one, or maybe customizing something for you and your family or your travel partners, go to the Contact Us page, and our amazing Dream Enablers, customer service agents, are available 24/7, ready to respond via email, phone, Skype, text message, WhatsApp, website chat, whatever it is, and they're ready to help you book the perfect tour for you.
They really are, and I highly recommend it. So, grazie, Angelo. Thanks for joining us on Untold Italy today, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us again.
It's incredible to me to think of the foresight, genius, and ultimately the generosity of the Medici family to have collected and preserved the treasures of the Uffizi Gallery to be enjoyed by so many people today. You know, there's a moment as you're wandering through the different rooms where you come across a corridor overlooking the Arno River. From here, you can see the Ponte Vecchio and the Vasari corridor leading the Old Palace to the Pitti Palace on the other side of the river. And beyond that, the city and its bridges glimmer below. At that moment, it is beyond doubt that the city itself inspired this amazing collection. And if you ask me, it's worth a visit to the Uffizi just to see that view. But what an amazing, truly amazing gallery. And as Angelo says, there are many, many ways to appreciate it. And I have to say, one of the best ways is on a tour with the experts and the passionate experts from LivTours. You can go and explore and get their insight and, you know, their amazing ability to read the room and adapt things for your needs and your family's needs. And I can't recommend them highly enough. So if you would like to join a tour with LivTours of the Uffizi Gallery, you can find a link to their website in our podcast show notes at untolditaly.com/239 for episode number 239. You'll also find a link in your podcast app. So we have put it everywhere so you can find it. Grazie mille. Thanks to all our wonderful listeners for your ongoing support of Untold Italy. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, then we would love it if you shared it with your Italy-loving friends and family. And grazie mille to all of those who have already done this. It is so, so appreciated. Now, that's all for today. Next week, we're taking another magical trip to Italy via the sound waves. But until then, it's ciao for now.
The Untold Italy podcast is an independent production. Podcast editing, audio production and website development by Mark Hatter, production assistance and content writing by the other Katy Clarke. Yes, there are two of us. For more information about Untold Italy, please visit untolditaly.com.